So it's time once again for an updated 2017 NFL mock draft. Yippee! Now, there was a thought in my mind of making this particular edition a 2-round version. Then I decided against it this time. What I can say, the next mock draft that I do in about 2 weeks, I guarantee will be 2 rounds. 2 rounds. Isn't that awesome? I guess. Well, you can check out all 32 picks from a 1-round mock draft in the description box below. And as I always beg and plead with all of you, at least hear me out a little bit before you shit on it. Also keep in mind, even though the college football season is well underway and we're starting to focus on the college football playoffs and what have you, especially the crazy weekend that just happened where the 2, 3, and 4 teams in the playoff rankings all lost, still a lot of football left to be played, and it's still very, very early in the draft process. But some things are starting to take hold. And here are some of my observations based off of what I'm starting to see take hold. We've got a spectacular class of secondary players. Corners, safeties. You're talking about potentially a class where you could have 3 safeties go in the first 15 picks, and I think that is definitely a possibility. You could have 5, 6, 7 corners go in round 1 as well. Maybe 4 safeties go in the first round. Maybe 5. If you got 3 safeties go in the top 15, that is naturally going to bump the next level of safeties up. The guys that are on the list behind the guys such as the Malik Hookers and the Jamal Adams and the Jabrill Peppers of the world, so on. So the secondary class, for the teams that are looking for help in the secondary, it's definitely going to be there in round number 1 in this draft. This is one of the better secondary classes I've seen in quite some time. Not just because of the number of the players that could potentially go in round 1, but actually the quality of some of the players that can go in round number 1. The running back class is still really, really good. In this particular mock, I've got 4 running backs going in round number 1. I think at the end of the day, that could be a bit ambitious. We may end up with only 3. We could end up with 4, maybe 5. It just depends. I think the performance of an Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas is going to help the case of running backs being viewed as first-round picks again in the NFL. When you look at what he's done and the Dallas Cowboys have done with him, sure, you can point to the offensive line, and they're definitely a factor as well. But I don't think the Dallas Cowboys regret the 4th overall pick investment they made in Ezekiel Elliott, is what I'm getting at here. This quarterback class is not good the way I see it at the moment. You will notice 2 big names that are missing from the list, Deshaun Watson and Brad Kaya. At this moment, I don't have either one of them as first-round picks. And again, that only comes with some studying of them, not a complete study of them, so that could potentially change. But I've talked about for a little while now how I thought Deshaun Watson would drop. And usually this is something I'm pretty good at in the draft process, and those of you that have watched me for a few years know this, is that sometimes I can get very good on the guys that are going to rise in the draft process and the guys that fall in the draft process, especially when it comes to the quarterbacks that fall. Like last year, the Christian Hackenbergs, the Cardell Joneses, the Connor Cooks. This year I look at guys like Deshaun Watson and Brad Kaya, and these are a lot of guys that were in a lot of top 5, top 10 mocks early on, including mine. But as time goes along, these guys have major questions about them, and they're more likely to be day 2 picks, in my opinion, than day 1 picks. Deshaun Watson, there's going to be some questions about his accuracy and his decision-making. I think with Brad Kaya, there's going to be a severe concern about his pocket presence, his ability to stand tall in the face of pressure, his ability to move within the pocket, and then taking the fact that he has a good arm, but he doesn't have great or special arm talent to compensate for those deficiencies in other areas. These are 2 quarterbacks whose stock is heading clearly in the wrong direction, in my opinion. And maybe they could right the ship, and maybe they could sit there and get themselves back in a first-round conversation. But right now, I think the 2 quarterbacks most likely to get first-round consideration are DeShone Kizer and Mitch Trubisky. When you look at Kizer or Trubisky, both of these guys have major fleas on them in terms of being big-name quarterback prospects. You look at Kizer, Notre Dame hasn't exactly had a great year. And I have concerns about Kizer and his accuracy as well. Trubisky, on the flip side, he can sometimes look the part, but then this is a guy who's a 1-year starter, so he's incredibly inexperienced. Do you want to take that inexperienced of a quarterback at the college level and take him that high at the NFL level? I mean, that's a serious question here. One thing that might stand out to a lot of you is not only do I not have a quarterback going number 1 overall, I do not have Myles Garrett from Texas A&M going number 1 overall. I've got the Cleveland Browns taking Jonathan Allen from Alabama. even going back to last year, I think a lot of you know I was a big fan of Jonathan Allen. I still am. To me, I kind of look at it as a situation where Myles Garrett is a special type of athlete, and I think he could be a really, really, really good football player at the NFL level potentially. But I don't know if he's ready to be a really good football player at the NFL level right now, and I don't know if he's ready to be a dominant player at the NFL level. He shows flashes of being dominant and unstoppable at Texas A&M, but so did Jadeveon Clowney. But I look at Jonathan Allen, and I see a guy that's potentially ready to dominate at the NFL level right now. I see a guy with more versatility in terms of the things you could do with him defensively, both in 4-3 and 3-4. Questions maybe abound about the amount of talent that he plays around in that Alabama system, and that is true. But even last year when you had A'Shawn Robinson and Jerron Reed there, to me, Jonathan Allen was still the star of that defense, and I most certainly think he's still the star of the defense now. On the defensive unit for Alabama, that might be even more loaded with talent this year than it was last year when they won the national championship. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that a guy like Jonathan Allen could be in the mix for the first overall pick, especially for a team like Cleveland, who probably thinks that Cody Kessler is going to be their long-term answer, and they don't want to spend the first overall pick on a quarterback because they are stupid. You had Carson Wentz fall into your lap. The Rams fucked up. You had a chance to clean up, and instead you didn't because you're the skid marks of the league. Now, you see I've got DeShone Kizer going to San Francisco, Mitch Trubisky going to Chicago, Myles Garrett goes number 4 to Jacksonville, and that could be a hell of a trio of pass rushers on the edge there with Dante Fowler and Ngakoue, and now you throw Myles Garrett into the mix? Woo-wee. Let's just hope Jacksonville can get a quality coach in there because it most certainly isn't. It most certainly isn't Gus Bradley. At the 5th pick, I've got the Jets taking Leonard Fournette. I just look at the Jets and, there's going to be talk about them taking Jabrill Peppers or somebody on defense, but get fucking real. At some point in time, they've got to make some type of premium draft pick investment on the offensive side of the football. And with the top 2 quarterbacks in this board already being gone and guys like Kai and Watson not being worth the 5th overall pick, no offensive lineman being worth the 5th overall pick, no wide receiver for them being worth the 5th overall pick, they've got to go running back here. There's nothing wrong with that. You bring in a Leonard Fournette, you could assume he could be a beast mode type of guy for you for a number of years. You might be surprised at some of the names that I have pretty high on the list because they haven't been on my mock draft before, but as I talked about before, these things are fluid and liquid and can change over time. A lot of focus and talk about Teez Tabor from Florida. It might very well be Quincy Wilson. That is the better corner at Florida. I think a lot of people probably agree with that assessment. I've got him going 6 to Carolina. They probably really regret letting Josh Norman leave like they did and going and signing with the Redskins. Then I've got Marshon Lattimore, the corner from Ohio State, going in the top 10 to New Orleans. The New Orleans Saints need help on defense badly, and getting somebody like Lattimore could be a big help to them. One of my favorite players so far, I just wanted to call this out really quickly in terms of players that I'm watching as I'm preparing myself for the draft process to come over the next several months. One of the favorite players that I have so far is Zach Cunningham from Vanderbilt. You see I've got him going 11 to Indianapolis. And, everybody's going to say, well, Indianapolis needs defensive. There's a part of me that wants to slate a Dalvin Cook to him, but Zach Cunningham, my goodness, Lord, son. He's got some special skills. I love the fact that he's got size, he's got speed, and he's pretty good at taking on blockers and actually shedding the blockers, avoiding the blockers. He seems to have decent instincts. Every once in a while, he can get too caught up with trying to make the big play, and he can get sucked in, and he could lose his gap discipline. This guy's a playmaker, and I think he could be a really damn good inside middle linebacker at the NFL level in a 3-4 or a 4-3. Just crazy good. Crazy good based off of what I've seen so far. So like I said, this draft class, if the quarterback class was better, I think I would look at this draft class as being a whole lot better. There is talent to be had, especially in the defensive secondary for sure. Especially in the secondary. But a good class of inside linebackers, too, with Zach Cunningham and Reuben Foster and Raekwon McMillan and Jared Davis. Some really good linebackers, too. Maybe not the best class in terms of edge rushers and defensive front 7 players, but you have some guys with some star potential. Jonathan Allen, Myles Garrett, and I most certainly would point to a guy like Carl Lawson, who, when healthy, is probably the best pass rusher in the country, in my opinion. This could be a pretty good draft class. We'll see how things play out. Like I said, I'll be back in 2 weeks with a 2-round mock draft. And by that point in time, I will have probably actually scouted some of these players, actually studied some of these players, and can give more tangible, confident opinions on some of these guys. Isn't that exciting?